Well, everybody, one of the highlights of going to the AIFD Symposium back in July was meeting my guest today. Welcome, Brenna, to the Flower Podcast.
Thank you so much, Scott. Oh my gosh, it was like meeting a celebrity when I walked past you. I'm like,
Oh my,
okay, it's about time. We need to meet. You're famous.
oh my gosh, you're hilarious.
Anybody who's anybody in the floral industry is on your show. So
Oh, well,
I
thank
feel
you.
I feel excited and honored. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Everybody in YouTube world seeing me turn 5 shades of red right now. So, anyway, it's all good. Well, it's so fun because as I have interviewed and talked to different people, I can't tell you how many times your name comes up and it's like, oh, you need to have Brenna on. Oh, you need to have Brenna on. And I'm just like, oh, I do. And it's just, that's why I was so glad when I
Oh,
saw you were going to be there that we could finally connect and chat and get to know each other just a little bit so we could have this time,
yeah.
which was awesome.
Yes, yes, yes.
So, always, my first question is always
Mhm.
about how you got into flowers. And I know from talking a little bit the other night,
Yeah.
you kind of had a different path into flowers. And so I'd love to hear, how did you
Right.
end up in our fabulous industry?
Yes. So, flowers, it's actually my second career, I should say. I actually come from dance, from professional dance, and I kind of just came, I've always had, I guess, I wanted to have a connection with people. So that was my way of connecting with people through dance and performance art.
Hmm.
And for flowers, I always knew I wanted to get into it somehow because of the same type of connection to people. And eventually I just took the plunge, switched from one career to the next. And I realized that this is what I wanted to do. It was a switch from the visual arts, performing arts to, excuse me, the visual arts or performing arts to the visual arts with floral design. So I had an awareness to line, to form, and all that kind of stuff before. And I think the transition somehow made it a little bit easier into floral design. And so this was about, I guess, 20 years ago. So I've been doing flowers for about 20 years now.
Wow.
Started from customer service in a high volume flower shop, and kind of just worked my way, learned about the industry, dabbled in a little bit of everything, and it's kind of brought me to today. So that's it in a nutshell.
I know you skipped a lot there though. So I wanted I
uh,
wanted to find out I wanted to find out. So
yes,
you are performing and
yes,
you're dancing, you're doing what you've trained to do,
yes,
and
yes.
and then you saw this connection to nature, or you saw
Mhm.
this I don't know. That's a big transition.
Yes, well, dance. So I guess we'll just back up a little bit here. So dance, I had trained as a youngster. I had been competing all my life in my youth, and then went moved to LA. As soon as I graduated from high school, my parents allowed me to just go off and just learn about life, be out there, meet other people, and join a community of dancers. And that's where I began. So that career it led me towards musical theater actually. And I did a lot of theater. One of the main things that I did do was I toured with the Miss Saigon National Tour in the States. So I
Wow.
did that for a long time. I was also part of the original Toronto company at first. I'm Canadian, born and raised here in Vancouver, BC. So I traveled with that. I did it's gig work, so a bunch of auditions and a bunch of jobs just led me to a really nice career. I also was a choreographer for a long time and a dance
Wow.
instructor. And I was a guest, yeah, as a guest teacher, guest instructor at many different studios. And that experience, I think that just, it was a really nice experience to have, again, just a little bit of everything of a certain industry. And it was actually during that time where I've always had a love for nature, but I saw how flowers, when I was been given flowers at the theater door, and just some very nice, very nice people who had come to see me had brought me flowers, and that really opened my eyes to something else, something else inside myself that made me want to give that same feeling back that I was receiving when I had flowers given to me. So from there, while I was on tour, while I was doing the Saigon, I had just read a whole bunch of books. I had this was before YouTube and all of that, so
Right.
I whatever sources that I could tap into, that's what I did. I also, while on tour, is I knocked on mom and pop shops all across the states and volunteered my time, because we would have shows in the evening and on the weekends. So during the week, during the day, where I didn't have to be working, I that's where I volunteered in shops and just said, "Teach me, I just want to learn." I, did everything. They taught me, yeah, obviously schlep buckets, but they also taught me a thing or two about design work. So that was really interesting. And I always knew there would be a time where I would make that transition, and that came in the year 2000. So, been doing it for a while.
Well, that's a great opportunity. I mean, just to be able to kind of volunteer and to just
Oh
learn from
yeah.
other people. I mean, in different places
Mhm.
and stuff, and um,
Right. And the
that's really
variety,
cool.
it's so vast, just all the different types of shops and how people do things. So there's never one way. There's never the right way and the wrong way. There is a fundamental way to do things and start off with design, but as for the way procedures are and people do in the shops, it was really great to see, just like I said, a variety of ways that people do things and meet all these walks of life now.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
that's incredible. And so at some point, I know obviously we met at the AIFD symposium, and so you
right.
are
Mhm.
AIFD, and I'm curious,
Yes.
what took you that direction to kind of, I mean, that's a big accomplishment.
Right. Well, that was back in 2007. So I had been working at this shop for about 7 years, I guess, at that point, and I had no idea what life was like outside of retail and events. And it wasn't until I was hired to do be a worker for a luxury event, and a bunch of AIFD members, friends of the lead designer, the designer, came in and we got talking, and I learned about AIFD. What is this? So I basically, there was a Palm Springs, Palm Desert was the symposium in 2007 in the summer, and that happened 2 weeks after. My boss at the time said, "Let's just go. Let's go." Okay. So we hopped in the car. We drove from Salt Lake City to Palm Desert and attended. We also volunteered. I think Beth O'Reilly was one of the first people I ever met. And
Really?
yes, yes, Beth. And so every year when we see each other at symposium, it's kind of a full circle when I see her now. So we volunteered for the workroom. We fetched ice. We did all those things but touch flowers. But we were just happy to do it because we were there and meeting all these people these artists. And it's not just about a dozen roses in a vase, it's floral art. And that just opened my eyes, and I was really hungry after that. The following year is when I tested in Chicago. I had I did as much as I could of learning and training before there were actual training courses that I knew about for testing for PFDE. But I just went for it. and I was able to snag that to snag those letters and walk across the stage the following year after that. So I've been a member since 2009, and I did it for many personal reasons. Again, I started off with competition, and this was a competition for myself to see if I could actually do it. And luckily, it went well. It went well for me. And since then, it's just been a community for me, and to open up more doors and just meet more people. And AIFD is not only American, it's really international.
Right.
You know, they, as you saw, they invite international guests from all over, and it's a fantastic. There's nothing like your first time at an AIFD symposium, but I'd have to say, Scott, this last one that we were at was pretty spectacular. Hey.
I know. And it was like, I told Hitomi, I said, that was my first one I'd ever been to. And of course, I'm
Mhm,
not even going
mhm.
as a member. I'm going, just, for my own learning and just, to kind of
Yes.
help see inside.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, I'm like, how do you even top this? I'm like, it's like, I know every year it gets better, but it's just
Yeah.
unimaginable,
Oh
how that
yeah. Well,
works. And of course, yeah.
in the workroom, I was next to Sue McCleary, Passion Flower Sue, across from Bart Hassam, the world World Cup champion. I mean, you really can't beat that energy and that atmosphere. And what's incredible, especially about those two, are just the generosity in sharing and the giving and exchange of knowledge and techniques and conversation, and they're just wonderful people through and through, as with many people who are there. So it was pretty spectacular, huh?
So I have to share this because being my first, I was kind of, when I heard about people volunteering and I saw
Hmm.
how hard they were all working, and I'm like, and I'd ask one, are you going to be in to see the program? And a lot of times, no, they were still back there helping. And I'm like, thinking to myself, like, but you're missing so much of what's going on there. And then I realized, and
Hmm.
I want to say it was before it even began, I realized this,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
when you volunteer in this kind of environment with this kind of
Hmm.
I mean, this is not a regular conference. I mean, this is like a week long floral
Yeah.
boot camp.
Right.
People are testing. There's
Right.
all these things going on,
Yes.
and when you're volunteering and you're back there, it's just like you described.
Hmm.
There's Sue, there's Bart, there's Renee, there's
Yeah.
I mean, I'm
Yeah.
just thinking of all Hitomi and Joyce,
Yes.
and I'm just thinking of all these people that are the behind the scenes,
Hmm.
making putting all this work together to make just the
Yeah.
best educational programs anywhere.
Right. Right.
And you get to be a part of it. You get to make these relationships and these connections. And so
Yes.
I totally
Yes.
get it now. I mean, I'm like,
Hmm.
I'm
Hmm.
sold. In fact, that's
Yeah.
probably where I'd like to be next time. So, um,
Yeah, I mean, the workroom anywhere, not just AIFD, but
right.
anywhere you can find where they're welcome to having your help. And a show takes a village, right? It never happens just by the person themselves. It's always a team of people. And to be part of this team, a team anywhere, you really gain so much. It's not just about sitting there and taking in the shows, which is wonderful in itself. And for this symposium, they actually went virtual, so you can go back and watch online on the app, which is wonderful. But but what you gain backstage and behind the scenes is really, I would say, very, very valuable. If I wasn't a presenter this time, I would have wanted to be volunteer for anybody who was back there.
Oh, right.
Uh, so yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's really, I would say, if you have the chance anywhere at your wholesale house, anywhere local, be a volunteer. Um, it's There's a lot to gain from it.
There sure is. There sure is.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
And it's interesting. It's interesting the relationships that can be made volunteering that are sometimes
Yeah.
hard to make when you're on the clock, so to speak.
Oh, right, right.
It's, I don't
Yeah.
know, there's just something, there's an inhibition that I think goes away. Well,
Hmm.
and you just hinted at this, and so I do have to
Hmm.
comment that you were part of an amazing presentation on stage. And I'm like, it totally, I think I even told, which I was glad to finally meet Eric in person from Greenpoint Nursery.
Yes,
And I'm
Eric
like,
Tanoi.
I'm like, I don't know, rejuvenated. Like I'm more obsessed about tropical stuff now than I was
Mm-hmm.
before because you guys did such an amazing job. I mean, what a candy store
Mm-hmm.
you guys got to work
Yeah.
with.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I got to work with Sue Tabal Yamaguchi and Lois Hiranaga, and they are two prominent designers on the island. One, Lois in Maui, and Sue on Oahu, so Honolulu, she's based out of. And yeah, absolutely. I was the tourist. I was the Canadian tourist, the adopted Hanai sister. But the pe people may wonder, okay, well, why are you on stage? This is a Hawaii show. But one of the things is it was about relationships, right? It was
Yes.
relationships mainly between the breeders, the growers, and designers. And I got involved because they have what's called they call reverse trade, so they want to really promote their products for on the mainland as well. And tropical nouveau styling is something that, Hitomi Gilliam coined the term, and we've been building that up. And now people know, a lot of people know more so than before what tropical nouveau styling is. It's combining the tropicals with the temperate flowers, with the farm field flowers and tropicals. It's okay to there aren't any. Before they thought there were rules that you could only use tropicals with tropicals and vice versa, but now with the combination and all these new textures and colors and things that breeders are coming up with, it just lends itself really well to that marriage. And so it was really about relationships. So my affinity to Hawaii from long ago has developed into one into flowers, and being there as a florist now is very different in a fantastic way. It's unbelievable to actually go to the nurseries and, I mean, just see it growing on the side of the road. All these monstera roots and the monstera foliage that's gigantic, just growing up the trees as we're driving by. It's amazing. So, yeah, so I'm involved with Hawaii in that sense, and it was a real privilege to be on stage and representing Hawaii Floriculture and Nursery Association.
Yeah, it was.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I everything you guys produced was just over the top, really great. And I'm
Thank you.
absolutely. And I'm excited about the idea. I
Hmm.
know that I've heard the expression tropical nouveau, and I know that you
Hmm.
just made a great explanation of it. And I
Hmm.
remember when I was first in wholesale, early on, people were always like, "Oh, I need some exotics," is what they would call them back then.
Yes, yes,
And
right,
they'd
right.
want birds or gingers or
Hmm. Hmm.
that was the two big things we got asked about all the
Right.
time.
Hmm.
And I never really understood the fact, why did we have to segregate our
Yes.
flowers into
Hmm.
these two camps,
Hmm.
and seeing them come together, it's just so
Hmm.
incredible.
Yeah.
Do you find that hard? Because I feel like sometimes people still are kind of, I don't know, like find it challenging, to mix gingers or
Hmm.
hydrangeas. I mean, I don't know. I'm not good at
Well,
it.
I think these days, especially with brides, with designers, we're very color driven, right? And now that there's so much more available color wise in any spectrum, exotics, like you say, or tropical flowers or temperate flowers, there's just so much more available. And people are a little more daring, I guess, to combine it. And texture and color is just huge, I think, in how designers play these days. So
Right.
it really lends itself really well. And the way we were saying how our relationships in Hawaii with breeders, growers, designers, we have a thread going that from the breeders with pictures from their test labs saying, how about this? Do you like this? And we can give our
Really?
input and say, okay, the shape of this seems just a little too stiff. We'd like a little more curvature. The spadix color is way off. It's too contrasting. So we need it to be a little more um, just complement
Homogenous.
more.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, exactly. So they're asking us those types of things. The stem length, the stem width. It's to have that input is just it's kind of crazy to think about that. We're in direct contact with the people who are breeding these flowers that we get to design with. I mean, it takes a long time from that time to actual that's okay. It takes a long time from this type from the testing to actual production, but just to have a say in it is a pretty unique thing.
Well, and that's really exciting because I
Mm,
don't know how many times, I want to say recently too. I'm trying to think what it was I found out. Oh, I remember. Recently I was talking with Bailey Hale, and he does a lot with sweet peas and breeding and things like that.
mhm.
And anyway, I don't want to say too much because it's an episode that's going to be released. In fact, it might be released before this one. I'm not even sure. But anyway, um, but just that, like, there was a group of gardening experts that set the standards of how these different, varieties that are bred, needed to
Mhm,
look, and sort of their
mhm.
specific. I'm not talking right. Their criteria that they look for when they're breeding. Like, if they're too long or too
Yes.
many flowers or too much space between the flowers, like
Right.
that's garbage. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, like why is that garbage? That's like from a cut flower standpoint, those are all
Right.
qualities we look for. And
Yeah.
and for you to have input with the hybridizers, the farms, and
Mhm.
being able to
Mhm.
say, yeah, this
Mhm.
this color kind of matters, or this stem length,
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
whatever. I
Mhm.
mean, I just think that's so smart of them and insightful for them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very.
amazing.
Yes, yes, yes. I mean, to exchange we're as designers basically we're the end users, so it should matter really what they put out there, and it's just a matter of exchanging ideas too, and things that the farmers think, oh well, that's not useful, that's a weed. Oh my gosh, we need more of those weeds because they're awesome.
Oh my
So I
gosh.
think nowadays I mean so many farmer florists, they're really leading the way in that aspect, right? Into bringing that new product to us
Yes.
and being able to use it and just creating what now we know what they want. This is what you want because it's beautiful.
It's funny you say that because I think back to Symposium, and I don't think I've seen as many, is it banyan roots and
Yeah.
monstera
Ficus fruits,
roots?
yes.
Yeah, all
Uh-huh.
being used in this design work. And I'm thinking, these farmers or
Yeah.
these hybridizers are trying to come up with the most beautiful this and that and
Yeah.
colors and all,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
here are all these people, playing with roots. And of course, that was one of the themes of the whole
Yes,
symposium.
roots. Uh-huh.
But I
Mhm.
still thought that was really great.
Yeah.
Because you can
Yeah,
take
yeah.
anything and make it beautiful.
Exactly. And when we go into the floral art, more that side, we're building structures. We're not just putting flowers together, putting it in a container. It's about building structures and having all these different forms and shapes. And as you see with the Europeans, they do a lot of the different shapes. So roots, things like that, branches, they lend themselves very well to that kind of work. So
Sure.
we're always looking for that cool, unique thing out there. Mhm,
Well, the fun thing too, I think that you as a professional, you have
mhm.
morphed now into doing more education too. and
Right.
teaching. In
Yeah.
fact,
Mhm,
that's
mhm.
almost all you're doing, right now.
Yes. Yes, actually. Never say never. I never thought I would be an educator in floral design. I just like to design flowers and do all that kind of thing, but the universe somehow has been kind of guiding me, directing me into that realm, and so I'm trying my best to listen to it. Hitomi Gilliam is a dear friend and mentor. She is the mentor of mine, and I mean, she's one of the best educators in the world, and also opens up the world to the other educators out there, Gregor Lurch and Per Benjamin, and so we have access to all of that, all of those educators who just they bring it, right? There's so much to learn,
Yes.
and you never stop learning, right? So as an educator, I'm
Hopefully.
continuously learning so that I can pass on what I know and what I think is important for others to know and hopefully inspire along the way. But as an educator, yeah, I feel very honored and privileged to be invited to speak for demos and do workshops. And I just recently came back from San Francisco to do one there for an organization. And from that, then I have a few more invitations coming up. So I can't say no because it's the universe saying, "Hey, this is what you need to be doing." Like I said, I didn't think I'd be an educator. I was a dance instructor, so I guess it may come from there as a choreographer and an instructor in dance. I guess it's kind of morphing into this world now of mine.
Interesting.
So, and I'm having a great time with it. I meet wonderful people, and it's fun to be creative with them. Mhm.
Yeah. Well, and if you're a natural teacher, then I mean, it's bound to happen sooner or later. That's for sure.
Well, it kind of dawned on me. My father was a teacher. Both my brothers have been teachers and or coaches. So I'm like, okay, I guess it runs in the family, and it's meant to be. It's in the stars.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I love that.
Hmm.
Well, one of the things when I see the incredible artwork, and I know we've talked about this with past guests, and so I'm kind of curious your take on it, especially,
Hmm.
you know, I know you've been doing this a long time, but I think compared to some of our guests, you're younger at it. You have maybe a little bit different perspective. And I'm just curious, as you have perfected and you like the visual art side of that and connecting that to the everyday application, is sometimes a bit of a challenge. And I'm curious, do you get those kinds of questions or how do you address that like when you're teaching?
Right, right. It depends on where I'm teaching or for what
Oh,
purpose,
sure.
whether we're talking about floral art or whether we're talking about retail sellability, right?
Hmm.
So I just have to take that in stride, and whatever, and tailor it to the viewers, the participants. Obviously, floral art, a lot of people who are in retail and events look at that and say, well, that doesn't apply to me because how could I possibly, time is money. And I understand that. I agree. I was in retail for a long time and events, and it's time is money. And also, you want to keep that creativity as well, though. You don't just want to be every day like the everyday person and do the same thing over and over.
Right,
So
right.
it's about trying to, yeah, it's about trying to translate it. And I try to take an aspect, if we're doing a demonstration, especially a show, usually that's over the top. I mean, it's like
Right.
runway fashion, right? You won't see that person necessarily wearing that walking down the street, but it's for show and for inspiration. And a lot of it I do is to hopefully inspire. But I like to have techniques where if you take just a piece of it even or use that material in your everyday design, that can just bring that little bit of artistry to it as opposed to just flowers. We're in the flower business, so yes, we are selling flowers, but if you can do a leaf manipulation a certain way, or pre-do some structures that once you've done it once or twice and you have that repetition going, it's just a matter of making it part of your routine. So that's a lot of it that I find is that in retail floristry, you get in I guess, a routine, sometimes a rut, and we all get in ruts, but you could be into that, but just to lift yourself up and lift yourself above that next person, I think you do have to keep evolving no matter what. You have to keep evolving, even if it's just adding one new technique a week or two new
Yes.
techniques a month, and just making it part of that routine, teaching your staff and getting them to do something like that. I mean, who knows what develops into something else when you introduce something into the routine. So you just never know. And it's possible. It's not just about, oh, you see this giant, big artistic structure. Oh, well, okay, whatever. It's nice to look at, but how can I apply it? There's always
Mm.
something to take. With any class, any workshop, some, okay, might be a little bit better than others, depending on different opinions. I always say, even if there's one that maybe I didn't get quite so much out of, there's always at least one thing that you can take away from any workshop, any class, whether it's, what to do or what not to do, right? It could be
Right.
anything. So I think that people have to keep open-minded. I see a lot of closed-mindedness out there, closing not just maybe just closing themselves off even. Well, I can't do that. I can't be bothered to do that. Well, why not? Sure you can. Anybody
Yeah.
can. So do it, and you're not going to know unless you do it. But I do know some florists out there who do own retail, and that's what they're all about. They go to these shows to gain inspiration and knowledge, and they do apply it. They do add one new technique and teach their staff, and then it becomes something really cool. And then their customers are coming back to them. Oh, what did you learn this week? Oh, what's the new thing, that you're bringing in? So it it's all valuable. It's a
Mm.
matter of how you perceive it, how you manipulate it into, or how you turn it into something that works for you.
Yeah. Well, I love that because I know at the wholesale house in Atlanta, we would always, I mean, I don't think a week would go by where we didn't have one or two phone calls of somebody calling us, and they're number one, they think that we do flowers, which we didn't. And then we would say, and then we'd always get that question, well, I'm looking for somebody who will do, we're looking to send flowers to someone, but I want something different. I mean,
Yeah.
that's how it was always put. I want something different. And it's kind of like,
Right.
okay. And you always knew, okay, there was two or three
Mhm.
people that we're going to refer that person to because we knew
Mhm.
they had that reputation. You know, we
Yes.
saw the flowers they bought and we also saw their work, so we would know,
Right.
okay, that's where to go.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is you don't ever know, who is going to appeal to and who you may
Mhm.
end up having a
Mhm.
lifelong customer just because you learned
Right.
this
Yes.
technique and it doesn't look like something you would see just anywhere. It would be
Right.
something, special.
Yeah,
um
yeah, absolutely. And then by building that reputation, then you earn their trust. You have
yeah.
their trust, and that gives you more artistic freedom in the end to create something because they trust you. Okay, go with it. I mean, that's what designers want to hear, right? Designer's choice. That's
That's
the best thing
right.
you could hear.
Yeah.
So make yourself a designer's choice designer, and I think you got it made.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's exactly right.
Mhm.
Especially
Yeah.
because when people come to you for that and they're like, well,
Mhm.
the last time I ordered that, it was fabulous. Let me do that again.
Mhm.
And
Mhm. Mhm.
I
Mhm.
think that's amazing. Um, I,
Yeah.
I I often think to myself, um, to make such. I know when we were talking the other night, one of the things I wanted to ask you about was that is such a huge evolution of where you were in dance and now where you are on stage again,
Mhm.
doing
Mhm. Full
education.
circle.
I know, isn't
Yeah.
it interesting? And so um, I often wonder what inspires and grounds someone like yourself. And I think I know we were talking about sort of your why.
Hmm.
And I'd
Hmm.
love for us to kind of talk about that if you don't mind.
Yeah, yeah. I think when you said the why, I had to ask myself that probably about 10 years ago.
Mm.
So just because I was in retail for a long time, I dabbled in wholesale as a buyer and then did event work, a little bit of teaching, not as much, but event work. And I kind of lost sight for a little bit. And I would
Really?
say that's probably something that might be described as burnout,
Okay.
right? You
Yeah.
kind of just get into that routine of something where all of a sudden, for some reason, it doesn't become fun anymore. And then you have to just take a step back and take a look at what you're doing and the why. You said, why am I doing this? Why am I, killing myself to get this done and that done? And for what? What's the benefit at this point? So I went back to that and I went back to asking myself why I got into this in the first place. And we touched on it a little bit at the beginning of the transition from one career to another. And it was about the connection, the emotional connection, I guess within, right? As
Hmm.
well as to other people. And so then I just had to kind of reevaluate, all right, maybe I don't want to do this anymore. Maybe retail is no longer for me. Maybe what else can I get into? So at that point, I was AIFD, and then I discovered competition. There's another
Okay.
facet of the industry is competition.
Yeah, most
And then
people
that
don't
that
even consider that. I mean,
right. Oh
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. People are like, what? You compete? I'm like, yes, I do.
Yeah.
So that's another facet. And that really, I'd have to say, I'll just start off by saying if you have the opportunity to compete, I think you should. Even though you think, oh no, I could never do that. Yes, you can. Anyone can. It's just a matter of, yes, putting yourself out there. And that's what I did. My very first competition was not a live competition. It was actually at the Lansu Chinese Garden in Portland, Oregon, that Floral Design Institute, Leanne and David, were a part of. So I decided, actually, one of the reasons was just because, well, I want to go to Portland. I have a couple of friends there that I'd like to visit. So
Sure.
let's go to Portland. So I applied, I submitted an idea for a design. It's about chrysanthemums, their showcase. You have to showcase chrysanthemums. And I proposed a design that I had in mind and it was accepted. And I said, okay, cool, we're going to Portland. So hopped in a car and that was in 2014. And we had 2 hours, a 2 hour window where we could do our installation, do our presentation, and then we had to be cleaned up and out of there. We had a pedestal where we could put it. So I'm pretty, people who know me, I'm kind of the 11th hour, last minute kind of person. Anyway, so I just recently had a baby, Pearl. So she was maybe, I think, 6 months old. And the time to set up was 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Then you had to be out of there for their judging. I stroll in at I think 8:55. I had no idea. I had no idea competition, right? What is this? Okay, I made my piece at home and then I was just going to bring it and place it on top. And so I'm walking in with my stroller and my piece and I'm like, "Oh my God, we didn't know if you were going to show up." So I showed up, I plunked it down. I was horrified. I was mortified because everyone's around me were these big installations and just fabulousness all around. I thought, oh my gosh, what was I even thinking? I shouldn't be here. And an emotional roller coaster that entire day. Because that night there was a reception and there were two awards. One was the best use of the chrysanthemum and one was a jury's award. and I won basically second place in that entire competition. I think there were maybe two dozen entries. It's a small competition, but
That's
I
awesome.
was shocked. I was shocked. I was so shocked. And so that from there on, the rest is history. You know, I was kind of hooked from there. I just learned at that point. I did some homework and learned more about competition, about that world out there. But that really allowed me to just spark that artistry again, spark that love for flowers and what I can create. And that kind of led me on a path this way, which led me into being an educator and putting myself out there in social media. I've been the past 10 years, I've been back in Vancouver, Canada from Salt Lake City, Utah, and social media has been basically my outlet and my connection to the industry. So
Right.
putting myself out there has really opened up a lot of things for me. Like I said, with just having the privilege of being invited to design, to demo, and teach has been wonderful. So that's kind of my path to why I do this now. And now, as an educator, to to have the kind of feedback from students saying, "Oh, okay, cool, that's inspiring. Oh, wow." There's nothing more gratifying than that. So, what's led me here, it's been a road, but I love the path that I'm on, so can't complain.
Yeah, that's so
Yeah.
special. I love that too. I think I'm curious if we go back in time to that person who showed up to put that design. You said you that whole day you had this roller coaster going on,
Oh,
but
yeah.
yet you won
Yeah.
like second place. And I'm like, being that was your first competition, is it just the
Yeah.
fact that is it the comparison of like seeing other
Mm,
people that makes you doubt those things, or because you kind of felt like you were new
mm.
to it, it was
Right,
I'm
right.
just trying,
Yeah.
because I feel like so many times people don't make that jump because they're afraid.
Mhm.
you
Mhm,
know
mhm.
they're
Yeah,
afraid of
yeah,
being
yeah, yeah.
judged, they're afraid
Yes.
of putting themselves out there, they're
Yeah,
afraid of those
yeah,
things. And so I mean, I
yeah.
just think it's so, you just don't know until you try. I mean, you could have come in last
Right.
place, but you would have
Yep.
still have learned something from it.
Exactly, exactly. Each time you learn something, and you know, like how you're saying about the just the self-doubt and second guessing. I don't know if that will never be a part of my process. I think I second guess a lot of things, and we hear the term we talked about the other day, imposter syndrome, that I'm not worthy to be here. I'm not sure. I don't know everything. So how could I possibly teach anyone anything? That goes that's the emotional roller coaster through the process as well. And same
Sure.
with competition. You do a piece like, I don't know. I don't think so. That's not even going to cut it. And then you're surprised by the result. So it's just, yeah, I think you just have to jump off the deep end and go for it. And like I said, put yourself out there. You never know what is going to come back. And you also, with just never knowing who you're going to meet and where that ends up. I mean, some of the relationships I have now, I would never have thought in a million years that would be possible, but just through connections and putting yourself out there, I think is so important. It is scary. It's scary, especially all artists, I think, um, live that type of that there's always, well, is anybody going to like it? Is anybody going to like me? I think that's, you know, with celebrity, that type of person, that's always going to be part of that process because you're always, I guess, being judged. You're there. That's the nature of competition. You're being judged, and it's a matter of just reflecting, pulling all everything you know, having good people around you as well for support. I have
Mm.
so much support, especially I would have to say, you know, from social media. There's so many people that I don't even know personally. I've never met who are some of my biggest supporters and cheerleaders, and it's incredible. And I always hope to give back. I always want to be that person to somebody else. And you never know who you are to somebody else, or how you've how you've touched them in a certain way. And to have people that I've never met come up to me and say something like that, or I remember this and I was so inspired by what you said here. And, maybe I might not even recall that certain moment, but somebody does recall, and you're something maybe that was in passing could mean so much more to somebody else, just like me. So, I mean, things that I've experienced, they probably have no idea what the effect it had, but those types of things, when they have an effect like that on somebody, it's important to somebody. It means something to somebody, and I think you just have to remember that a lot of things that I put out there, really, I just think, okay, if one person gets it, if just one person is inspired, I'm satisfied
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that person is important,
Yeah, yeah. And that's the
right?
thing is
Yeah.
sometimes we diminish our own importance. And I mean, because we
Mhm.
think we're not, like you said earlier, we're not worthy or we're
Yeah.
not good enough. And
Mhm.
that's not
Mhm.
the case. And I think it's not until I mean, it's so funny because since we just had our 4-year anniversary of the podcast, I think back to,
Oh,
we
wow.
worked so hard to get those first few episodes out there. And we were building,
Uh-huh.
we're putting all these pieces in place.
Mhm.
And then we set them free, right? We put them out there,
Mhm.
and then it was kind of like, oh my gosh, all of a sudden you start thinking, oh my gosh, what have I done, or what, and you start
Yeah.
freaking out a little bit, and you start thinking,
Yeah.
what happens if no one listens or no one whatever,
Mhm.
and it's crazy to think that this year we'll
Yeah.
break 1 million downloads,
That's
and
amazing.
it's
Amazing.
like it's just
So good.
it's until you take that jump that
Right.
it is scary, but the thing
Mhm.
is I think we talked about this the other night too, and
Mhm.
I really have gotten to the point where in some ways I do tell myself this, that that's our own brain
Yeah. Yeah.
trying to keep us
Oh, yeah.
safe, trying to protect
Right.
us,
Yeah.
and it's like from the unknown. Well, sometimes the
Mhm.
unknown is really awesome. It's way better than we thought.
Yes, yes. Yeah, often I would think often more times than not, it ends up being, "Oh, well, what was I so scared of before?"
Right.
Because this
Exactly.
is awesome. Yes, yes, yes. But yeah, I guess it's, getting that feedback.
Yeah.
For me personally, it does help. I think, being sometimes I'm in my own little bubble, and to let someone in and either with constructive criticism or not, it's all good. It's all good things that you can take from it, and that important thing is that you grow, and competition is a great way to speed up that growth. Right, because you're
Yeah.
in there and you're in there. Oftentimes, most times for competition, I go through these moments, actually before stage anything, I go through these moments of, oh my gosh, this is the point of no return. There's no choice in the matter right now. I am here. And so let's do it. Let's do this. Let's stay in the moment and keep on going and learn and grow and enjoy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I love that last part, and
Hmm.
enjoy. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
I wanted to, and I always like to ask this question
Uh,
towards the end of our episode, and that
yeah.
is your advice question. And
Yes.
I think you've had some amazing mentors, and you've had some amazing
Mhm.
lessons yourself, and so it can be anything that
Definitely.
you want it to be. But I'm just curious, what piece of advice would you leave with our listeners?
You know what? I think I said it earlier because it's a mantra that I've picked up for myself is never say never, because you never know. It's true.
Yeah.
I a lot of times something will come up and say, "Oh, I'd never do that," but you literally, you never know what's going to happen. I didn't think I was going to be in this position ever as a floral educator on the main stage symposium. That's just crazy, right? But 2016, I was telling you, I was on stage, main stage for the symposium there in Anaheim, California. That was my very, very, very first speaking engagement for floral design. And
Wow.
it was nuts. I was a wreck, of course, because there were over 1,000 people, many of my peers, and though I know they're very supportive, we all know floral designers. So I was very scared. I will admit that I scripted it word for word. And I pep talked myself before. Again, I couldn't believe I was about to walk on stage. Somebody actually might have to push me because I'm resisting a little bit, but it happened and I learned an incredible amount from that. And I also had so much support and learned how much support is out there as well, and that people really are cheering for you. They don't want you to fail. They want you to do great and they want you to be the best you can be. So I just had to remember that, and from then on, I just had to keep that in mind that you just never know what opportunity, what person you might meet, even if just for a moment. Never close that off. Never close off the possibilities because they're out there and they can happen. If you, I would say, if you really really want it, the universe, listen to the universe. It speaks volumes, I think. Hmm.
Yeah, that's great. Well, and I think too, so many times, we're our own worst enemies. And,
Always. Yes.
and it's
Yes.
like we just have to,
Hmm.
um, sometimes too, I don't know what you think about this, but sometimes I feel like
Mm.
we just have to learn to dream a little bigger. Um, it's so easy to be content and just to think this is
Yeah.
it.
Oh yeah. 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 I struggle with that too. People are saying, "Oh, you should be doing this. You should be doing that." Like, well, I'm okay with where I am right now, but that doesn't mean that a year from now, 6 months from now, that another opportunity might come up that I realize or I'm listening to and paying attention to that message of, okay, this is what you need to be doing now. Have to keep your ears open, eyes open, and really just allow it to happen and make it happen.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Hmm.
Well,
Hmm. Hmm.
Brenna, thank you so much for being on the Flower
Thank
Podcast.
you, Scott. Thank you so much. I've loved this time with you. Thank you.